Is society finally ready to stop judging women who choose younger men? Because Hollywood has been telling these stories for decades, and nobody wants to talk about it. We live in a world where a 60-year-old man dating a 25-year-old woman is called distinguished. But flip those genders, and suddenly everyone has an opinion. These films did not just entertain audiences, they sparked conversations. They made people uncomfortable. They made people question everything they were taught about desire, age, and power. Today we are counting down 15 movies that dared to go there, and trust us, some of these will genuinely surprise you. Number 15. Prime, 2005. Let us start with something that wraps an incredibly awkward situation inside a surprisingly warm romantic comedy. Rafi is a 37-year-old Manhattan professional who starts therapy after her divorce. Her therapist is brilliant, warm, and deeply insightful. Her new boyfriend is 23 years old, charming, and completely obsessed with her. What could go wrong? Everything, because her therapist is his mother. Uma Thurman plays Rafi, with this gorgeous mix of confidence and emotional vulnerability that makes you genuinely root for her, even when the situation is objectively chaotic. Meryl Streep as the therapist, caught between professional ethics and maternal instinct, is absolutely magnetic. Every session becomes a landmine. Every date becomes an ethical disaster. The film never takes the easy road. It does not turn the older woman into the villain. It does not turn the young man into a trophy. Instead, it asks a very human question. Can real love survive real life? The answer this film gives is honest and bittersweet, and far more mature than you might expect from something marketed as a lighthearted comedy. This one sneaks up on you. Number 14. Hello, I Must Be Going, 2012. Picture this. You are in your early 30s. Your marriage just collapsed. You are sleeping in your childhood bedroom again. Your parents are trying way too hard to be supportive, and everything about your life feels like a step backward. That is exactly where Amy finds herself. And then a 19-year-old actor walks into her world and turns it completely upside down. Melanie Lynskey gives one of the most underrated performances of her career here. There is nothing glamorous about Amy's situation, and Lynskey refuses to let the character hide behind irony or detachment. The affair she has with Jeremy, played by Christopher Abbott, is not a solution to her problems. It is more like a mirror, showing her exactly who she stopped being and who she might become again. What makes this film special is its refusal to moralize. Nobody lectures Amy about dating someone younger. Nobody rewards her for it either. The relationship simply exists with all its awkwardness and electricity and tenderness and impossibility. Director Todd Luiso gives the whole thing a quiet, lived-in intimacy that feels completely real. Small film. Enormous emotional punch. Number 13. Adore, 2013. Here is a premise that sounds like it came from a fever dream. Two women who have been best friends since childhood. Two sons who grew up together like brothers. And then, almost without warning, each woman falls for the other's son. Not their own, the other one's. Set against the sun-drenched Australian coastline, this film commits fully to its impossible premise and somehow makes you believe every frame of it. Naomi Watts and Robin Wright both deliver performances of extraordinary restraint. These are not reckless women. They are not predators. They are mothers who understand what they are doing is transgressive and choose to do it anyway because the alternative, continuing to feel nothing, seems worse. The film has been criticized for not punishing its characters enough, and that criticism is actually the highest compliment. It refuses the easy morality tale. It sits in the discomfort and asks you to sit there with it. The chemistry between all four leads is electric. The blue ocean backdrop gives the whole thing a dreamlike quality that keeps it from ever feeling sordid. This is one of those films that divides audiences cleanly down the middle, and that division is exactly the point. Number 12. Chérie, 2009. 19th century Paris. Courtesans and scandal and old money. Léa de Lonval has spent her entire adult life mastering the art of being desired by powerful men. She is elegant, she is ruthless, she is exquisitely bored. Then she agrees to a favor. to educate the dissolute young son of a fellow courtesan in the ways of love. The problem is, she falls for him. Michelle Pfeiffer was 51 when she made this film, and she is ferociously beautiful in it. Not despite her age, but because of it. There is a scene midway through where she simply looks at Cherie across a room, and you understand everything about longing and loss and the terrible arithmetic of time. Rupert Friend, as Cherie, brings a petulant, wounded quality to the role that somehow makes his character sympathetic, even when he is being awful. Director Stephen Frears shot this adaptation of Colette's novel with extraordinary visual lushness. Every frame looks like a painting. But underneath all that beauty is a story about a woman who breaks her own rules and pays for it quietly. The ending will stay with you longer than you expect.
Number 11. The Dressmaker, 2015.
Imagine revenge, dressed in Balenciaga, arriving on the back of a motorbike in the middle of the Australian desert. That is essentially the opening of this wildly entertaining genre-bending film that manages to be a dark comedy, a revenge thriller, a romantic drama, and a fashion statement all at the same time. Tilly Dunnage returns to her tiny hometown after decades away, carrying secrets, guilt, and an extraordinary talent for haute couture. She transforms the women of Dungatar while dismantling the men who wronged her, and somewhere in between, she falls for Teddy, younger, warmer, and completely uncomplicated in the best possible way. Liam Hemsworth plays Teddy, with a straightforward masculine decency that provides the perfect emotional anchor for a film that otherwise delights in chaos. The romance between Tilly and Teddy is not the whole story, but it is the emotional heart of it, a reminder that she deserves something real and uncomplicated after a lifetime of being blamed for things she did not do. Kate Winslet is magnificent. Judy Davis is completely unhinged in the best way. This film should be more famous than it is.
Number 10. Gosford Park, 2001.
Robert Altman brought his legendary ensemble approach to the British country house murder mystery, and the result is one of the most quietly devastating explorations of class desire and power ever put on screen. A weekend shooting party in 1932. Aristocrats upstairs, servants downstairs, and underneath the rigid social choreography, a dozen different hungers being carefully managed. The romantic entanglements cut across both class lines and age gaps in ways that feel less scandalous and more simply human. Ryan Phillippe's footman with secrets and the various women drawn to him represent just one thread in a tapestry so richly woven that every viewing reveals something new. Maggie Smith is devastating. Kristen Scott Thomas is ice-cold perfection. Helen Mirren operates on a frequency all her own. What Altman understood, and what makes this film relevant to this list, is that desire does not respect the categories we build around it. Age, class, marriage, obligation. These are structures, and structures always have cracks. This is a film about the cracks.
Number 9. I Am Love, 2009.
Luca Guadagnino's sensory masterpiece announces itself in the first 30 seconds as something different from anything else on this list. This is not a film about a relationship. It is a film about a woman waking up inside her own life and being destroyed and reborn by what she finds there. Emma, played by Tilda Swinton in a performance that requires a separate conversation entirely, is Russian by birth, Italian by marriage, and essentially invisible by circumstance. She has been absorbed into the Recchi family empire so completely that she has forgotten the sound of her own name in her mother tongue. Antonio is a young chef and her son's friend. He does not pursue her with words. He pursues her with food, with the primal language of pleasure and attention. Their affair is depicted with such visual and sonic intensity that it becomes almost overwhelming. Guadagnino films desire the way other directors film violence, with full commitment and no apology. The consequences are operatic. The cinematography is ravishing, and Swinton is simply extraordinary, inhabiting this woman's awakening with a physicality that is breathtaking. This is cinema at its most ambitious.
Number 8. In the House, 2012.
Francois Ozon does something genuinely brilliant here. He takes the classic student-teacher power dynamic and folds it inside a story about storytelling itself until you genuinely cannot tell where reality ends and fiction begins. Germain is a frustrated high school French teacher who discovers that one of his students, The quiet, perceptive Claude has extraordinary talent. Claude begins writing a serialized account of his visits to the home of a classmate. Specifically, his growing fascination with the classmate's mother. Germain becomes addicted to the story. He encourages Claude to keep going further. And as the story escalates, he realizes he has lost control of both the narrative and his own ethical boundaries. What makes this film extraordinary is that the older woman, younger man dynamic is simultaneously the subject of the story and the mechanism through which the film interrogates obsession, creativity, and the responsibility of the artist. Fabrice Lucchini as Germain is compulsively watchable. Ernst Umhauer as Claude is one of cinema's great unreliable narrators. This is a film about desire, but more precisely about the desire to watch desire. Brilliant and deeply unsettling.
Number 7. 5 to 7, 2014. New York City. A young aspiring novelist named Brian meets Ariel at a bus stop on Fifth Avenue. She is French, she is sophisticated, she is married, and she is completely out of his league. She is also available, but only between 5 and 7 in the evening, because in France, a certain kind of arrangement is understood between adults who know what they want. This film is the most romantically idealized entry on this list, and it makes absolutely no apology for that. Anton Yelchin, whose death in 2016 gave everything he appeared in an additional layer of poignancy, plays Brian with a wonderful mixture of literary ambition and romantic recklessness. Bérénice Marlowe as Ariel is effortlessly magnetic. The film understands that it is telling a fantasy, a very specific New York intellectual romantic fantasy, and it leans into that completely. What saves it from being merely escapist is the genuine emotional intelligence it brings to the ending. Brian gets what he thinks he wants, and then he has to figure out what that actually means. The film's final act is genuinely moving in a way that sneaks past your defenses because you were so charmed by everything that came before. Number 6. The Piano Teacher, 2001. Nothing on this list will prepare you for Michael Haneke's adaptation of Elfriede Jelinek's novel. This is not a film that asks you to enjoy what you are watching. It is a film that asks you to understand things about desire and control and damage that you might prefer not to know. Erika Kohut is a virtuoso piano professor in Vienna. She is brilliant. She is exacting. She is living under the psychological weight of a suffocating relationship with her mother. When a gifted young student named Walter falls for her with the uncomplicated confidence of someone who has never been told he cannot have what he wants, the collision is catastrophic. Isabelle Huppert won the Best Actress prize at Cannes for this role, and it is the performance of a lifetime. Cold, furious, wounded, and deeply frightening all at once. Benoît Magimel as Walter is equally remarkable. The power in this relationship shifts and inverts in ways that are genuinely shocking. This is a film about how people who have been denied self-determination can become their own worst enemies. It is not an easy watch. It is an absolutely essential one. Number 5. Notes on a Scandal, 2006. 2 women, 1 secret, and the most terrifying friendship in cinema history. Richard Eyre's film operates simultaneously as a psychological thriller and a sharp social satire. And it contains 2 of the greatest performances of the 2000s happening in direct competition with each other. Barbara is a veteran teacher who has been at her school for decades. Watchful, disciplined, and deeply lonely. When glamorous younger art teacher Sheba is caught having an affair with a 15-year-old student, Barbara does not report her. She befriends her, and she uses what she knows. Judi Dench as Barbara is genuinely chilling, playing obsession as a kind of controlled fury that is all the more frightening for how reasonable it sounds. Cate Blanchett as Sheba brings a completely different register, chaotic, romantic, catastrophically self-deluding. The film refuses to let either woman be simply the victim or simply the villain. It understands that people are capable of doing terrible things for comprehensible reasons. The screenplay by Patrick Marber crackles with dark wit. The central relationship between the 2 women is more charged than anything else in the film. This is a masterpiece of controlled menace. Number 4. Milena, 2000. Giuseppe Tornatore gave us Cinema Paradiso, and then he gave us this, a film equally beautiful
and far more morally complicated. Set in wartime Sicily, it tells the story of Milena through the eyes of 13-year-old Renato, who becomes obsessed with her the moment he sees her walking through the town square. Monica Bellucci plays Melina with a kind of tragic radiance. She barely speaks. She barely needs to. The town's obsession with her, the men's lust and the women's hatred, is projected entirely onto her body, and she carries it with a dignity that eventually becomes impossible to maintain. Renato's infatuation is rendered with total honesty. Tornatore does not pretend this is innocent. He shows us desire forming in real time in an adolescent mind, and the collateral damage that desire causes in the real world. This film was cut significantly for its American release, and the director's cut is the version that reveals its full power. The cinematography by Lajos Koltai is stunning, golden, sunlit, and melancholy. The ending is one of cinema's great, quiet moments, a film about watching that implicates the viewer completely.
Number 3. The Reader, 2008. Stephen Daldry's film begins as a coming-of-age story and ends as something entirely else. 15-year-old Michael Berg falls ill on a street in post-war Germany and is helped home by Hannah, a tram conductor in her mid-30s. When he returns to thank her, their relationship becomes an affair. She asks him to read to her. He reads. They fall into a rhythm. Then she vanishes. Years later, Michael is a law student observing war crime trials, and he sees her in the dock. And what he learns forces him to confront everything he thought he understood about the woman who shaped him. Kate Winslet won the Academy Award for this performance, and it is deserved. But what makes it extraordinary is that she plays Hannah across multiple decades and never once reaches for easy sympathy. Hannah is complicit in genuine evil. She is also a victim of a different kind of systemic failure. The film holds both truths simultaneously without resolving them, and that refusal to resolve is what makes it genuinely great. Ralph Fiennes, as the adult Michael, carries the weight of a man who has spent his life unable to love anyone properly because his first understanding of love came wrapped in something monstrous, devastating, and impossible to shake. Number 2. All Things Fair, 1995. Bo Widerberg's Swedish film is the most quietly radical entry on this entire list, and the least seen. Stig is 15 years old. Viola is his 37-year-old teacher. Their affair begins with her initiative, and it unfolds against the backdrop of small-town Sweden in the 1940s, with an honesty that is both tender and completely merciless. What separates this film from exploitation is Widerberg's absolute refusal to judge or to titillate. He presents this relationship with the same moral seriousness he would bring to any human story. Viola is not a predator in the film's framing. She is a woman suffocating in a marriage to a man who has drowned himself in alcohol. Stig is not a victim. He is a teenager experiencing the full disorienting power of first love with someone who actually sees him. Johan Widerberg, the director's son, plays Stig with extraordinary naturalism. Marika Lagerkrantz as Viola gives one of Scandinavian cinema's great performances. The film won the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film. It is heartbreaking and honest and essential, and almost nobody talks about it anymore. That needs to change. Number 1. The Graduate, 1965. There was never going to be another number 1. Mike Nichols' film did not just top a list. It rewired the cultural conversation about desire, generational rebellion, and what it means to want something you were not supposed to want. And it did it with such wit and precision and formal brilliance that nearly 60 years later, it still feels alive. Benjamin Braddock has just graduated from a prestigious university, and he feels absolutely nothing. He floats in his parents' pool. He stares at his future. He lets himself be seduced by Mrs. Robinson, his parents' friend, a woman old enough to be the mother of someone his age, which, in fact, she is. Their affair is rendered by Nichols with a cool, ironic distance that refuses to romanticize what is happening. This is not love. It is two people using each other for completely different reasons. Then Benjamin falls for Elaine, Mrs. Robinson's daughter, and everything shatters. Dustin Hoffman's performance launched a career and a generation's identification with aimless, privileged disillusionment. Anne Bancroft as Mrs. Robinson is one of cinema's great iconic performances, powerful, intellectually suppressed, and ultimately tragic.
The Simon and Garfunkel score is embedded in the cultural DNA of anyone who has ever seen it. The final shot on that bus, two people who got what they thought they wanted and already look uncertain, is one of the most perfectly ambiguous endings in film history. This film invented the conversation that every other film on this list is continuing.